Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sports. I'm about to be joined by Ken Weeb from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together, we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show following a game that's the kind of game I like to see. Last game against the Vancouver Canucks, not the biggest fan of those games. I know I had one of our viewers reach out to me. You know him as GIF Guy, and he'd said that he was really happy with that Canucks game. It's, not as hard on the heart, all that kind of stuff. I get it. If you're a fan, you probably want things in the bag. I don't like games like that. I don't like seeing big strong men beat up on tiny little weaklings. That's what that was for me, where the Vancouver Canucks find themselves. The Seattle Kraken, a team out of the playoffs, but they're a team that can challenge you. They've got really big, strong, structured defense. They're a team that works hard. They can't score. That's their big problem. But that said, they're a team that, usually they're going to put up a fight. Okay. And I thought they put up a good fight tonight, but in spite of that, we're entirely overwhelmed by the Winnipeg Jets. I would suggest that the Winnipeg Jets, this was as dominant a performance against the Seattle Kraken as we saw against the Vancouver Canucks. It just looks different with the Vancouver Canucks because they basically said, here, take it. You want it, take it. The Seattle Kraken, although overwhelmed, I thought stayed in that game, gave it the college try the whole time. But the reason I'm such a fan of these kind of games is because these are the kind of games where the Winnipeg Jets are challenged and answer to the challenge, right? And that's, I think, where you learn. That's where I think you build up resilience. That's, I think, where you start to kind of create the identity of a team that is just constantly comfortable in being challenged, in things maybe not going your way. I mean, listen, this is a game, maybe it's the hockey gods who take and redirect that puck off the stanchion into the middle of the ice that ends up leading to the Dillon DeMelo goal set up by Nikolai Ehlers. Maybe that's what it is, but that game had a feeling of inevitability even before the Jets scored in that game. They were just doing the right things over and over. Now, the first period, not their best first period. I didn't think it was an absolute stinker, but it looked like it was going to be, a fairly even game at the beginning. And then the Winnipeg Jets turn it on in the second period, and they just did not turn it off in this game. The effort was there. The effort was right. The structure was just ironclad. By the end of it, you could just see they just would not allow the Seattle Kraken into their own end. This is another one of those games that is just like beyond, for Connor Hellebuyck. This is, if you don't think that the Winnipeg Jets themselves as a team are helping Connor Hellebuyck pad his stats, you aren't paying attention to this. We'll have more on that later in the show, but this is just absolutely the kind of thing that you want to see from the Winnipeg Jets. You get into a game, you go down one, you don't change your structure, you don't abandon your structure chasing goals. In fact, you double down, you strengthen your structure, knowing that structure is going to give you opportunities. Power play comes through, looked absolutely dominant on that first power play. Second line was absolutely on fire all night. I thought third line, Glenn Fricker, who was our keg save of the game winner in the last show, messaged me, and I thought this was a really interesting topic that we should bring into the show. But he said it's so nice to have two lines now. He meant the second line and the third line just driving the puck to the front of the net. There's a play I want to talk about later about Cole Perfetti gets to the front of the net. He's right there to tip a shot. Another one where he's driving down the side of the wing and uses what Cole Perfetti does really well, kind of slicing and dicing from the outside, but doing it with speed and just tossing it in front to the chaos that's being created by Nino Niederreiter driving the front of the net. That kind of drive by Nino Niederreiter is what results in the penalty, and thus the Winnipeg Jets' first goal. So third line doing their part. I thought the fourth line looked very hard to play against. Second line just looked absolutely lethal out there for a lot of the game. I thought they were the Jets' best line, so it makes sense that they're the line that's out there to score the winning goal. And hey, the coach must have thought they were doing well because he had them out there in that situation. But there's just no end to the things that I can say that were right about this game. It's not a full 60-minute effort. Let's kind of take that out of the vernacular and just talk about the idea that in a game where the first goal goes against you, how do you respond? The Winnipeg Jets couldn't. This to me is a textbook response. I don't want to say perfect. There's a couple mistakes here and there. One of them leads to our got you covered play of the game. One of them leads to our keg save of the game. But this just is the Winnipeg Jets doing what they do best, smothering teams, refusing to allow them into their own zone. Just give us the puck back. You're not allowed to have the puck. That kind of hockey is the kind of hockey that I personally saw in the building to see the Florida Panthers run their way to a Stanley Cup with this brand of suffocating hockey. You have to like the Jets. Last 4 games, defensive game, it is absolutely something to marvel at. That's my take on the whole thing. Time to bring in the man with the best music in the business for his take. Here comes Kenny, folks. See, Mike B gets it. Kenny says you have to like the Jets, Renny said. So he's starting to get into line. It's about time, this unruly chat room we've always got here. Ken, you may see
Stone Cold said so.
Yeah, you may see me take a pull off of I'm just trying to get the food in when I can. So I've got a little smoothie here. So don't mind. I made sure that I got a purple smoothie because I got the purple tie going on. So if I get any seeds in my teeth, at the very least, they're going to match while they drive people crazy. But of course, rocking the gorgeous purple tie with the gray suit that I got from my boys down at Vittorio Rossi, as you are looking fine. A little bit Edmonton Oilers colors there, the copper.
You should recognize the tie again, buddy.
Of course I do. Of course I do. But you need to stop letting me take credit. You just take credit for it. You take credit for that eye. You put it on and you
credit where credit is due, buddy. Credit where credit is due.
Well, let's give the credit where it's really due, and that's Frankie and the boys down at Vittorio Rossi. So if you want to look like Ken does tonight or I do tonight, head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Avenue. Walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you. Ask for Frankie and the boys, and they'll make you look like $1 million. Ken, take it away. What a night.
Yeah, impressive. I mean, not the best first period as you mentioned already. You know, Jets are a little bit flat at times. Their puck management not very good. They sort of fed right into the transition game of a team that should have been tired at the end of a 5-game road trip. But 9 shots allowed in the last 2 periods of play was a pretty impressive finishing hold if we're going to talk about Stone Cold and wrestling here. But yeah, I mean, just impressive. I mean, I'm going to spend we'll get into the nuts and bolts here, but I'm going to spend some time on Mr. 600 here in my opening soliloquy here to the buffet, and we'll get to the rest later. But Dillon DeMelo is, just a picture of resilience, Sean. Like, this is a late round draft pick, had to scratch and claw. He's walking down memory lane in the morning, talking about, playing on his offside with Matt Tennyson in his first game, being nervous to face the New York Islanders in his first game, all kinds of nerves, getting the nerves out of the way. They lost to the Islanders that night, but, the lessons that he started to learn from being in the lineup with, guys like Joe Thornton, guys like Patrick Marleau, guys like Joe Pavelski, those fingerprints are still a part of what Dillon DeMelo brings to the rink every single day, Sean. He's grown into an incredibly important and understated leader on the Winnipeg Jets. This is a classic example. We've talked about this a ton, about the Jets, ever since the captaincy was removed. This is a player that doesn't need a letter in order to lead. Dillon DeMelo comes to the rink. He brings a certain level of professionalism. He is sometimes a quiet guy, but he's a pretty funny guy also. I think he's beloved by his teammates. You could tell by, what Nikolai Ehlers didn't want to get into detail, but the celebration that happened in the room afterwards, you don't just have those types of things for, someone if they haven't become part of the fabric of the organization. Dillon DeMelo is so appreciative of the journey, Sean. And again, this is a guy who, when he was traded here in February of 2020, I'm pretty sure Dillon DeMelo didn't really have, on his bingo card that he would be signing 2 4-year deals and, spend 353, I think, of his 600 games with the Jets. He would have had no idea when he was at a time where he was trying to lock down with the Ottawa Senators, Ontario guy, playing often on the top pairing with Thomas Chabot, a team that you're familiar with, Sean. They couldn't find common ground. He gets traded to the Winnipeg Jets, immediately signs a 4-year extension. By the end of the extension, plays it out, had to be patient, saw other guys sign extensions before him who were in a similar situation. And lo and behold, there he decides that his best fit is with the Winnipeg Jets. Yes, he got paid well at $4.9 million on a 4-year deal, but this is a guy who has gone from, third pairing guy in and out of the lineup. And I love the admission, Sean. To me, Dillon DeMelo, talking about the kind of, early in your career, a little bit of woe is me. Why is this happening? Why can't I get a stable, shot in the lineup? Was replaced by absolute pure work ethic, worked his ass off to get where he is today. And guess what? Now he's rolling on the top pairing along a Norris Trophy candidate. And there's no debate over where he belongs in the lineup. This is a story of resilience. It is something that is worth celebrating on a night where he plays his 600th game, and then you get a storybook finish. Like, this is a classic Hollywood ending, right? Here's a guy, 27 seconds left, as you talked about, mysterious stanchion play, looks like Larson makes a smart play off the boards. It's going to be out. Nope. Off the stanchion, bounces to an area. Nikolai Ehlers finds it, draws someone to him, finds Dillon DeMelo in the high slot just inside the point. He has a perfect screen in front of him, a double screen in some ways. All you see, you're Dillon DeMelo, all you see is an opening above the glove of Joey Decord, who was fantastic in the contest. You rip it bar down. The place goes bananas. You go nuts. Celebration is crazy. Again, we've talked about it. There were some times where, I think it's probably fair to say there were times this year where Dillon DeMelo, wasn't playing quite at as high a level as last year. That's really turned lately, I think, for me. And not that he was playing poorly. It just, he played at such a high level last year that it was tough to get to that level. And the last while, I've thought that Dillon DeMelo has just been fantastic for the Jets, Sean. And today was another classic example. 22-35 of ice time, 2 shots, 3 attempts, 3 block shots, and a GWG in his 600th game to sort of put the cherry on top of what was a really special night for him and his family, and a special night for Jets fans who celebrate a guy who, loves to be here. He's, wanting to raise his kids here, has really adopted this place as a second home. And, again, he's just a good person, and that good person is a very good hockey player. And he was rewarded on a night that meant a lot to him and his family.
I'd like to say this about him. I talked a little bit about CJ, about this on CJOB. I think Dillon DeMelo is more important. And I know you're not saying that. I think people would say Dillon DeMelo is an important person for this franchise. I think he's more important than most people think. I think Dillon DeMelo is kind of the beginning of the culture of people who came here and came to Winnipeg. They picked him up in the offseason. We've seen how many trade deadline pickups that come to Winnipeg and leave right away afterwards. Even, guys like Stastny, who ended up being, really part of the Jets culture for a long time, left afterwards. This is a guy who came here, and I think what Dillon DeMelo recognized was like I said this on the radio, Dillon DeMelo is a pro hockey player. Like, there's a lot of hockey players out there who are just really good hockey players, some that are super skilled, some that are just like physical freaks. Dillon DeMelo is where he is right now for one reason and one reason only, because he's a pro and he does all the right things over and over and over again. He's got the right attitude and he's got the right team first mentality. He's a pro hockey player. And I think what he came and he saw here in Winnipeg was a place where a culture that he could be a part of to help kind of grow that exact same mindset. And I think to me, Ken, whenever I think of the idea of now, a guy like Mark Scheifele sticking around long term and Connor Hellebuyck sticking around long term, and Josh Morrissey is a guy who would be a forebearer of this as well, of course. But I think he takes a look at a guy like Josh Morrissey and thinks, well, if this is the kind of town where a guy like that is saying, hey, this is where I want to be because this is an organization that is going to let me pursue exactly who I want to be. This is the kind of organization that's starting to reward those kind of players who give that kind of commitment, which the Winnipeg Jets no doubt can have rewarded Dillon DeMelo and given him the opportunities he's looking for. But when you see a guy like that coming in, like you said, he's part of the leadership group. He doesn't have an A, but he's no doubt part of the leadership group. I think he's important to the culture of the Winnipeg Jets because I think guys like Dillon DeMelo kind of blaze that trail where a guy like Mark Scheifele, who like we know was looking other places, and Connor Hellebuyck, we know that. I think when those guys turned and said, no, we're going to stay here, as crazy as it seemed at the time when those two players did it, it shouldn't have seemed crazy because Josh Morrissey had already done it. Dillon DeMelo had already done it. These are guys who looked in this market, and Dillon DeMelo maybe even more so than Josh Morrissey because Josh Morrissey was signing a contract extension. Dillon DeMelo was set to kind of go wherever he wanted twice. And what he chose to be in Winnipeg because what he exemplifies, the organization values and wants other players to exemplify. Dillon DeMelo would be more important here in Winnipeg, I think, than maybe any other dressing room in the entire NHL. So it's important that he's a Winnipeg Jet. It's important to celebrate his accomplishments. And you could just kind of see him rising to the occasion. Kind of doesn't surprise me at all because he's at 600 games because of, this organization. He's where he is because of this organization. And I would say this organization owes a lot of where it is right now to Dillon DeMelo.
Yeah, great pull by you. And yeah, I mean, the Jets did a great job of bringing in more culture guys like Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt afterward. But as you mentioned, this was the start of, getting things flipped over. And also it was part of the renovation project that was the Jets blue line. I mean, I had just pulled it up here, Sean. That first year with the Jets defense included obviously Pionk and Morrissey and Tucker Poolman still going, but this defense core also included Lucas Spiza, Dmitry Kulikov, Nathan Beaulieu, Anthony Bitetto. Ville Heinola got his first 8 games. Sami Niku played 17 games that year. Carl Dahlstrom also played, Sean. That's we're going back in the time machine. That was the year that DeMelo got traded. Exactly. We're in the hot tub time machine. DeMelo played 10 games that year. Kind of got a taste of it. And as you mentioned, he was kind of in the position where he was ready to put down some hockey roots. And, lo and behold, it's worked out incredibly well for him. The following year, they picked up Derek Forbert. But again, it still took another year after that before, the likes of Schmidt and Dillon were brought in here. So I couldn't agree more. This is a guy who, again, Sean, today, this is one of the biggest, to this point, I mean, this is a guy who wants to get to 1,000 games, maybe even 1,200, as he talked about. He's 600 right on. Let's play 600 more. He's talking about his neighbors this morning. Like he's become part of the culture
fabric of the community.
Fabric of the community, I think, is just a great way to put it. He's a great person. He's a very insightful person. He's an articulate interview. He's kind of become the. In some ways, he's like the modern day Brian Little, even though he plays a different position. He sort of, isn't afraid to go to places, even when the things are going well. He's able to identify some of the issues that need improvement, and that's a very important quality if you want to be part of a winning team. And we talk always about accountability, Sean, and the ability to be a hard marker on yourself. Dillon DeMelo would be very high on that list as well, and also too, I mean. Yes, Thomas Chabot was a great partner, but Josh Morrissey has really meshed incredibly well with Dillon DeMelo. Again, Josh has spoken, outwardly in many interviews, including with you and I, about the impact that DeMelo has had with him and his success. And there's no doubt that Josh Morrissey as a partner has been helpful for Dillon DeMelo. It's helped him, pad his bank account, but that is deserved. He's done a nice job, an excellent job since his arrival here. And he's going to play a lot more games in a Jets uniform. And That's probably good news for the Jets, because those are the kind of players that you build your foundation around. Even when he wouldn't be held in that superstar stratosphere, but such an important person on so many different levels in terms of what he brings to the rink every single day and what he brings to the table as a player himself.
Ken, I've got one last thing to say about Dillon DeMelo. The Winnipeg Jets going and picking him up and then doubling down and signing him and then doubling down and signing again. You know what? That's paid off.
Yeah,
that's
buddy.
paid off for the Winnipeg Jets. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And hey, if you're looking to pay off high interest credit cards or debt, we suggest you go talk to our friends at Cambrian Credit Union about their payoff loan. They can show you how taking out a loan to pay off your debt actually gets you debt free faster, and you can save thousands of dollars. Go to cambrian.mb.ca to book an appointment online and have it pay off for you the way it's paid off for the Winnipeg Jets with Dillon DeMelo and how it paid off for them tonight. Okay, Ken.
Lastly, sorry, I want to just one more, and I wrote about this today in the Free Press, Sean. Honestly, Dillon DeMelo for a third-round draft pick. Kevin Cheveldayoff's made a lot of shrewd moves over the years, but this is one of the underrated ones that does not get talked about enough. I mean, yes, Nino Niederreiter for a second, excellent. Plenty of trade deadline acquisitions, but in terms of people that have stuck around, man, tough to beat that value for a top pairing defenseman.
Ken, I'm glad you brought that up. We were going to do a story on Hockey Night in Canada last year at some point, and it was about all the, like, you take a look at the Winnipeg Jets. They're a team that's built, largely on drafting, right? And that's how it was for a really long time. Like, the Jets were just a team full of guys that they drafted and brought into the system and all this kind of stuff. But they're also a team that, they don't sign players for the most part, unless you want to count own signings like Dillon DeMelo. But the trades, like, how often do second round picks, third round picks, fourth round picks never make the NHL, right? And you're taking a look at, like, exactly what you said. Dillon DeMelo now has been an anchor on this team for a long anchor in a good way, right? Anchoring down as a foundation for how long? And it cost you a third round pick. Like, I'd like to see who that third round pick was for the Ottawa Senators. I'd like to go back to that draft and take a look at all the players taken behind that and see what the chances are that pick would have turned into an NHL player, because it's turned into a player the Jets have had for a long time. Nino Niederreiter, I believe, was a third round pick that they sent for the acquisition.
Second round.
It was a second, fourth for Vladdy Nemestikov, correct?
Right, yeah.
So if you take a look, the Jets have built a whole bunch of players into their lineup that they just went out and basically traded. I hate to say it, Ken, I don't want to be so down on the draft, but for next to nothing or close to nothing or probably nothing, a probable nothing trade to get those guys in. Kevin Cheveldayoff, it's another thing that I wanted to talk about on a Hockey Night in Canada broadcast. We haven't done it yet, but boy, oh boy, you've got the Heart campaign, up and running for Connor Hellebuyck. You've got, like the potential chase for, they got a long way to go to catch Leon Draisaitl, but the goal scoring that's happening here. But, we've had the conversations about the Jack Adams and R. Neal's place in that conversation, Ken. How about, Kevin Cheveldayoff finally getting his due for what he's done here, consistently putting a tough team up in front of the rest of the league year after year after year, and doing it without one of the tools that most teams lean on, and that's the free agency period. Anyways, we got to move on here.
We'll tie up the bow here. You asked, I looked it up. Ottawa's third rounder in 2020 was none other than Levi Merilainen. So just getting a taste of the NHL as Dillon DeMelo is into his sixth season with the Jets.
There you go. And actually he's been pretty good.
Pretty good,
far.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. Man, the Jets blew that. No, I'm kidding. I'm just totally kidding. Anyways, let's move on. But before we do, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out?
Right on. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, Whether you're buying, selling, curious about what that house in the corner might be going for right now, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU at LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including our podcast.
Okay, let's get into that second line and how they played tonight. I thought, Ken, just with a quick comment, they were the best Jets line tonight.
Yeah.
What did you think?
Oh, there's no doubt they were the best Jets line. I like the fourth line in a small sample, but the Jets second line, was exceptional. What do we got here? Shots for 15, shots against 3 on the old on the old natural stat trick 5-on-5. That is domination station in terms of what you're doing. Scoring chances for 7-2. High danger 4-1, but it was how they generated, Sean. Now, again, classic Nikolai Ehlers in a game where his line was the best on the ice, clearly. He's thinking about the one turnover that he had. And again, rightfully so, it was not his best play. He hustled and made a very awkward play to make it happen, to defend it. But in that game, he was an exceptional player, flying around, buzzing. He was everywhere. That line was excellent. They were physical. Adam Lowry, they were forechecking everywhere. Adam Lowry, a shot and 4 attempts, 3 hits, 3 block shots. Nikolai Ehlers, Sean, 6 shots on net, 8 shot attempts. So he's flying around. Alex Iafallo, 7 shots on goal, 10 shot attempts. So if you're looking at the generation, that line was the line doing a lot of the offensive generation for the Jets. And I just love the way that they played. And again, I'm not here to say game 1 of the playoffs, this is what it's looking like. But the Jets have earned themselves the right to try out and lengthen the runway for this idea. We've talked about it. Right now, they're running Adam Lowry the way that the Carolina Hurricanes and Rod Brind'Amour uses Jordan Staal. Can you move him back to a third-line checking role if you need to? If you get a true 2C, like a Brock Nelson or someone like that, by all means. But you don't have to right now, and you broaden the search now. You don't have to necessarily get a center.
Yeah.
You can get a high-end winger, if that makes sense. If you want to get a third-line centerman, because you want to move more of your assets to get a defenseman in the top 4 potentially, you can do that also if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff. But man, I like what I'm seeing from Nikolai Ehlers and Adam Lowry. Lots of great chances. Ehlers set up Lowry for that, Rattler special off the crossbar. Looked like it dented it. But yeah, Alex Iafallo, absolute beast again on the forecheck today. I thought that Ehlers was just flying around the ice, Sean. I mean, he really was. He was skating. He was using his feet. He was creating all kinds of havoc, creating for himself, creating for his line mates. And when he's skating like that, it's impressive to watch. I think that adding that element, again, it wasn't a true shutdown game as often in the game today. Wasn't necessarily matching going up against McKinnon like they did on Saturday, but I like the way that they played. I mean, they were exceptional. And, you talked about it a lot this year. Alex Iafallo, another prime example of if you choose to give him more, he can give you more, right? Then that's something that not every player can do that, right? That's the other part of the equation there. So, very impressive what that line was able to do today.
Again, I just go to the directness of that line. I mean, they're straight lines. They fly. Adam Lowry is a faster player than people give him credit for. I mean, you can see it in all those, penalty kills when he gets a chance heading the other way. He does not get caught.
Right.
He's big player with a big stride. Alex Iafallo, we all know what he does. I mean, I believe it was, there's a play where Alex Iafallo, they're trying to clear the zone, and I think Nikolai Ehlers knocks the puck out of the air, and then they move it to the other side of the ice, and they try and get it out that way, and then Alex Iafallo knocks the puck out of the air. I mean, the Jets' defensive sticks were on fire today, but that's what Alex Iafallo gives you, right? Like, he can defend in so many ways. He defends really well with his brain, whereas a guy like, Adam Lowry defends with that big body, and he leans on you. Alex Iafallo's got that great stick. And then now you add that speed to it. This is a really, really good shutdown line. This line absolutely ran over the competition tonight like a
Yeah.
freight train. And that little bit of that offensive instinct that you get with Nikolai Ehlers, the fact that a couple games into this, he's finding Adam Lowry for those plays like
Yeah.
that. It just tells you that there's, again, I say they work because they make sense, because they are both straight line players. They both use their speed. They're both very direct. Alex Iafallo is just kind of the perfect support guy for that. I've said this, and I said it because I've been talking about moving Alex Iafallo up the lineup
Yep.
for a long time. I think he's a guy who deserves it. He's got to do the same thing, the same call that I've had for Cole Perfetti for a while. If that second line is going to be something that sticks around and keeps going, because that's what some people are calling for, I need to see him. I called for it on the radio earlier today. Alex Iafallo is looking great everywhere he goes, Ken. But when you're playing up the lineup, looking great is one thing. Putting points up on the board is another thing. I think he needs to start getting into putting some points up on the board if he wants to stay in that spot. But that line, just absolutely something. They have for sure. There's been a bit of a wake-up call in that line coming together for all those players. Absolutely, no doubt there's been a bit of a wake-up call. And, of course, you know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place if you have any roofing, siding, or exterior needs. You can also call Pristine Roofing at 204-237-7663. And if you're waiting for the spring or summer season, maybe you don't need to. My guy, North End Rick, assures me, and that Pristine Roofing, they're the best of the best. They can do your roof, they can do your siding, they can do those kind of jobs in the middle of the winter time right now, and there's no cost to that. So if you are waiting for a time of season to call, that time of season, folks, is absolutely right now. Ken, let's touch on the third line before we move on.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I thought a little bit of a tough start at times in the first period, especially. They had some tough shifts, but overall, I thought they got better as the game went on too, Sean, quite frankly. And, this today is another example of what I've liked about Cole Perfetti in terms of cranking his game up a little bit. Yes, they're still a little bit snake bitten, still looking for that next goal, but 3 shots on net, 7 shot attempts, 2 hits. So again, I'm seeing him involved in the play. I thought he was moving his feet. He was winning board battles. Again, getting around the net with Nino Niederreiter. It's been, kind of something that he's followed suit. And, that's something that's probably going to help him when he does break that, goal scoring drought after breaking the points drought the other night. 21 shifts for 18 minutes for Perfetti. So I liked his game. I liked what I'm seeing from Niederreiter, involved on the forecheck a lot. Him too, 2 shots, 3 attempts, 2 hits, 2 block shots. Kupari buzzing around, you're getting the full Rasmus Kupari experience in what was his 200th NHL game. Still very early in the learning process for him. Looking more comfortable with a little additional ice time here. Sean, 16-10 tonight. Little down on the face-off dot, 43%. But again, I think that there's that line has potential. And again, once Nemestikov is back, is it as easy as maybe just sliding Nemestikov in there? Do you move Nemestikov down? We'll see. But like that explosive speed element is something that's working with that line. But Sean, my feelings about Nemesnikov and Niederreiter. They played together at times early on when both players arrived. So there's going to be an opportunity for them to maybe get back together too. And that's to take nothing away from what Kupari has done. It just Nemestikov has a little bit more polish as a player, right? When it gets down to crunch time and everything else. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in terms of where guys are slotted in, or, does Appleton get eased back in on the fourth line to begin with? Like there's a lot of choices coming for the Jets, and not just on defense, which we'll get to in a minute.
Well, but before we get to that, because I want to touch on some of the things that you talked about, but do you think, Ken, when Appleton gets back, do you think this experiment will just come to an end and that they're going to return to that third line when he gets back?
I'm not certain. It may be that
What's
simple
your gut
for Scott
telling you?
Arniel.
What's your gut telling you?
I think it's still a little bit early for my gut to weigh in. I think that Scott Arniel is going to want a little bit more evidence before he's ready to make the choice. Small sample. It's, 3-game sample so far. There'll be a fourth game. Mason Appleton may return to the practice along with Nemesnikov. They both skated today, for those wondering about the injury updates. I think there would be some value in just starting out, just based on how the Jets are playing and with how the way all those three lines are, or all four lines are playing, frankly. But I think there would be some value in leaving three of the lines together and starting with the fourth line of Morgan Barron, Nemesnikov, and Appleton as the fourth, and then let those guys ease back into things. I'm not saying that's what they're going to do. I'm thinking that is something that would be worth trying if you're a head coach and you want to cause the least amount of disruption for a team that is rolling the way that the Jets are. What do you think? Do you think he just goes automatically back to it?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm hopping off the fence right now, and I'll give you something. So I don't think he's going to go automatically back to it. Okay. I think it's going to be like a couple games, but I do think they go back to it, and I think they go back to it in fairly short order. And I think that there's a way that they think this team works, right? And I think definitely The Winnipeg Jets coaching staff has the playoffs in mind, right?
Yeah,
and so
sure.
it's one of the reasons why, when everyone was talking at the beginning of the year, screaming to break apart that first line, they didn't do that because they had a plan for that first line. And listen, Nick Ehlers can slip onto that line and they can be great, right? And they know that. But that doesn't mean that they're going to just let's go give that a try. It's because the Jets crave consistency, maybe more so than any other team in the league. And in doing so, they kind of dig into the things that they think work. And I think they do truly think that line one works the way it is. Hard to argue with that, the way that they've been scoring. I think they think line three is exactly what they want for the playoffs. I think they think that line can win them series. Here's the deal. Lowry's line, they're going right now. They're suffocating. It's great. They're showing some opportunities here. To your point, and this isn't me making the excuses. It's funny. All the people who are in here making all the excuses about the Jets on road trips all that time, and the reason for this don't seem to be saying, well, let's all cool our Jets here. The Jets just played two teams at the back end of 5-game road trips. I guess that only works one way. But I think the Jets like what they have on the fourth line. They like that first line. And I think Dom Zappia says would like to see Lowry line on the road before we make them long-term. For sure. This is what you call a small sample size on this here, right? But the one thing that I don't think that as suffocating as Ehlers and Iafallo and Lowry were tonight, they're not heavy the way that Lowry, Appleton, and Niederreiter are, right? That line can grind you. And so I think the Jets truly want that line. They want another crack at it. They want to go to the playoffs, and they want to see if they can take that line and have that line just absolutely erase some of the other star lines that they know they're going to be facing in the playoffs. I think you want that line up in the face-off dot against Jack Eichel's line if you make it as far as, going to the Cup, to the Western Conference Final, and you're dropping the puck there, or you want them going against Connor McDavid, or you want them going against the top line of the Dallas Stars, or you want them going against the Avalanche. Didn't work out well last year, but I think they want to give that another crack. And so because this team craves consistency, I don't think this forced experiment, and that's what it is. Folks, it's a forced experiment because the Winnipeg Jets had an injury. It was to a center. They needed to move things around. And I just think, Ken, you are right. It opens up the idea that you can go in different places. Maybe we don't just need a 2C. Maybe we can go and get a 3C and, leave Lowry where he is and bump Kupari down or whatever it is. But the certainty of it is, if you take a look at that third line, as much as I like what Cole is doing with Nino Niederreiter. Well, as much as I like what Niederreiter is bringing out in Cole's game, I still don't think Niederreiter is as effective right now as he is when he's on that third line. And let's just be honest, you can't count on Rasmus Kupari as a producer on that line, a guy who scores a lot of goals. Maybe he can get some pucks towards the net, but you are basically relying on Nino Niederreiter to put the majority of the pucks in that net there. He can do it
Yeah.
but is he better used elsewhere? I believe the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff thinks 1 is locked in. We'd like to lock in 3. 4 is basically locked in. We're probably going to tinker at the draft, at the deadline when it comes to that other line. I think that the Jets crave consistency too much to stick with this, even though it's working. I think that they think it would work regardless if they went, because it's not like that second line when it was together with Nemestikov was costing them defensively. They're still a suffocating team. So that's my
just
take.
not as much production. And again, I said try that fourth line at the beginning to ease those guys in for a game or two. I didn't say that that's the long-term play here, and we'll see how things shake down. There's lots of time to sort this out. But the important part for our Scott O'Neill and his coaching staff, you now have that line as an option to go to if you need to go to it at some point in down the stretch, in a playoff series, in a in game if you need a spark, any of those things.
I've got 2 premises I want to run by you.
All right. I'm ready.
This is just a little bit of a maybe pulling the pin, throwing the grenade into the conversation.
Perfect.
This is a night, Connor Hellebuyck, like I think you could have taken 20 other goalies in the NHL and put them in the net here tonight, and they would have walked away from that game allowing 1 goal or maybe even 0 goals. This was one of those nights where the Winnipeg Jets absolutely dominated their opposition, really didn't give them a sniff. Now, it's interesting because I saw one of our viewers, Owen, tweeting earlier today, and he was tweeting about something he was very right to tweet about, because you know me, I've gone on my rant about Connor McDavid and how it's absolutely a travesty that he doesn't have more hearts that he has. I think there was a lot of years that were missed there. And he talked about the idea that because Connor McDavid is on a team with Leon Draisaitl, Owen's belief, which I think a lot of writers have shared who vote on this award, well, you can't vote for him because there's another really good guy. So you can't do that. Careful what you wish for in that argument, because if the media around the NHL was paying attention, and this is what journalists should do. They should take a look at a player and say, okay, why should he win this award? Why shouldn't he win this award? If you're going to go and say to Connor McDavid all those years, or maybe to Leon Draisaitl this year, yeah, but he plays with that guy. So really, how good does he have to be? That doesn't work. That argument works in my mind. Now, I'm not saying this. I think I'm the guy who went on Hockey Night in Canada and introduced the topic of Connor Hellebuyck as MVP. So you know where my thought process is on this. But if you're going to use that logic, you can't vote for McDavid because Draisaitl's on the same team. The fact that this Winnipeg Jets team is as good defensively as it is and gives Connor Hellebuyck a night like he had tonight, a night like he had last game, a night like he had before that, where he's allowed 3 goals in the last 4 games in regulation time. That's insane. But how much of that, if we truly honestly take a look at that, is the way that the Winnipeg Jets have played defensively? This isn't a guy who's bailing a team out. This is a guy who's playing behind an iron curtain of defense. And there could be writers out there who would look at that and say, listen, how can I vote for the guy for being the best goaltender when he doesn't even really need to tend goal that vigorously on a lot of nights because that Jets team is so good? I don't think it'll happen, Ken. Here's the reason I don't think it'll happen. I don't think enough writers pay enough attention to the market on the outside to know how good the Winnipeg Jets are. But I would suggest, if you are going to use that argument the way it's been used against McDavid because of being with Draisaitl in the years past, those same people, if they were paying enough attention, would maybe be leaning into that.
Yeah, I mean, you still appreciate elite performance. And I don't think it was ever a question of if McDavid was playing an elite game or not. It just, Draisaitl was also playing at an elite level. And like sometimes their play is similar. I mean, it was the same, you know this, you and I had this conversation, or you were with me when I was having this conversation with Jared Bednar a couple of years ago, and both Rantanen and McKinnon were out of this world, but McKinnon missed 9 games with injury, right? So, I mean, Hellebuyck, the numbers are staggering. So again, like you said, sometimes if you're not watching the Jets very often, if you're in the East or the far West Coast, you look, oh man, 197 goals against, 929 save percentage. The guy's got the same number of shutouts as losses. Well, that's impossible to ignore in the race. But one of the bigger issues for McDavid, Sean, is that not only does he have, top 5 or top 3 player in the NHL on his own team, Nathan McKinnon has gone into this, ridiculous mode the last couple of years and provided some competition also. But yeah, I mean, it'll be super interesting to see how the voting goes, because Hellebuyck has been dynamic and fantastic. But as you mentioned, I mean, there's some nights where you could put the rocking chair up, but overall body of work, he's still quite high in the goals saved above expected, even though that's still a stat that's kind of in flux, let's say. But yeah, I mean, you can only, like we always say, you can only play the teams that are in front of you. And another game where Hellebuyck helped, solidify his, number of, goals against average below 2, which is kind of impossible to ignore at all times here. So.
Okay, let's move on to the next topic. I wanted to talk Ville for a second. It's the Say Something Nice About Ville Heinola segment. Really, really doing a good job of adding that element of like jumping up into the play quite often, moving the puck up. He's silky. He's smooth. He's starting to get it. Not only that, Ken, do I see him jumping into the play or moving the puck through the neutral zone, which I talked about, but he's starting to get it in the offensive zone as well. I think it's just a matter of time before you start seeing number 14 popping up onto the stat sheet a little bit more often. There was a couple times he turned it over in behind his own net. He did the kind of a no-look pass and threw it away. That one was, if the Seattle Kraken were a more offensively sound team, that could have really turned into something bad. He got caught on the boards another time where one of the I don't want to say the name because that's well, whatever. It's for them to say. But he pointed out, this is where Ville struggles in the defensive zone, kind of on his own boards, move the puck into a wrong spot. So listen, he's growing. The things that he does well, that, like I said last show, are the things that he's starting to show a little bit more of. He's still got a little bit of those bumps and bruises in there. If I were him, the focus would be like, okay, let's maintain what I'm doing up front and start really cleaning that stuff and trying to be ironclad, because those kind of like no-look passes that he threw here tonight, that's the kind of stuff that gets you knocked out. Well, it gets you knocked out of a playoff lineup, right? If you're going into a game and you're thinking this is going to be a 2-1 game, you can't be making plays like that. So he's got to root those out of his game, but I really like the way his game is trending. I point to that no-look pass because had Logan Stanley done that, everyone in the chat room, it would be all they would be talking about right now. Now, I wanted to get on this, Ken, just quickly, however long it takes here. But I talked about this last time. I got a lot of messages from people who said, Renny, you don't get it. We're saying this because he's just made so many mistakes over and over. I don't think I'm saying anything different than the vast majority of people out there. I've made it evidently clear that I don't think Logan Stanley is in the Jets' top 6. But I will say this, Ken, and I'm very serious about this. Cold Take Chris says there's been too much hate about Logan Stanley. I could not agree with this more. I hate when people pile on and start attacking players. Like Logan Stanley gets in the lineup because the coaches keep putting him in there, right? He's a kid chasing, or he's a man chasing his NHL dream. He's taking the opportunities that are given to him and he's going with it. The kind of level of hate that's getting in and the whole thing, and that's why I took exception last time to the whole suggestion that it's his fault. Connor Hellebuyck can't be responsible for stopping a shot from the top of the blue line because it was Logan Stanley on the other side of that giveaway. If it had been Josh Morrissey, no one would have said a thing. If it would have been Ville Heinola, people would have they would have sewed their mouths shut so that they couldn't possibly say something about it. This market has turned in a way on Logan Stanley, and I think, Ken, the Jets as an organization own some of this, right? The fan base has got frustrated and they are focusing both barrels on Logan Stanley, their frustrations on that player because of, mistakes that he's making, penalties that he's taken. And because you end up losing a guy like Declan Chisholm because the organization goes in that direction. So here's my take on this whole thing. I've made it clear where I see him as a hockey player. I couldn't make that any more abundantly clear. To me, it feels like the worm has turned on this in this market where I can not like it as much as I don't. But the fact of the matter is, it seems like this market has gotten really kind of gnarly, really mean towards the player and towards the person. I hate seeing it, but it seems to be what's going on here. The player is just a guy trying to make his way through the NHL. The team keeps giving him those opportunities over and over again. I wonder this, and I queried Dan Robertson about this earlier on today, and Kevin Sawyer as well. We had a conversation about this, guys. I hope you don't mind bringing this into the conversation. But I'd asked, and I ask you now, do you think, based on where Logan Stanley is at with the franchise, the way that the fans have booed him last game, booed him a little bit more, there's nothing at this stage that this player is going to be able to do that certain members of the fan base are not going to be attacking and hateful towards? Do the Winnipeg Jets, for their part of getting to this point, owe the player at some point to move him and get him out into what's starting to look like a really bad situation?
I mean, it's a fair question. And again, I just want to add my 2 cents here, and you've covered the majority of it. But if you don't like plays that are being made, that's fine. We're here to criticize and analyze. That's fine. It's the personal attacks that are absolutely absurd right now, Sean. And that I don't like. I don't like telling fans how to fan, but be better. Like, treat people like human beings and just ease off on the personal attacks. You can say whatever you want about his play, and let's face it, he needs to play better. Though today I thought he played mostly a steady game. He had a crossbar, was very involved in terms of shot attempts. Took care of his own end pretty well also. But anyways, it's not I mean, big picture, your question, I don't know. I mean, they've invested so much. I don't know at what point the cut the cord element is there, Sean. I'm not sure. It depends what's available and what else they're going to do. They're not going to give this player away. We know they've invested a lot in him. And I also think that the Jets aren't going to make their decisions based on a small vocal minority of the fan base. But overall, I mean, it depends on what's out there. Do you think that's he's only going to have a chance to figure it out somewhere else?
Well, I don't know about that.
If he's going to figure it out.
I just don't think that like, there's been examples of that, and Dan Robertson brought up some really good ones. I'm not going to go into them right now, but there's been examples of this in other markets where just, the worm turned for a player, and there was just nothing they were ever going to do honestly,
Larry Murphy is a great example.
Yeah. What would Logan Stanley have to do at this point? What kind of hockey would he need to play to win back the market? And to a degree, I've said this before, Ken, I think there's a lot. I don't know that there's a lot of people in the market that aren't questioning at this stage how he keeps getting the opportunities that he's getting. Yep. The organization maybe, okay, here's another way to put it, Ken. Based on what's happening to the player, maybe it's incumbent on the organization to come out and say, listen, this is why he's in the lineup. This is why we keep putting him in. This is why we value him. This is how he makes us better. And we know what we're doing. And all the rest of you can just park it because you don't know. At least if they did that, they're going out and they're standing up for the player in the media instead of just letting these mistakes and these games that he has hang out there over and over again for people to, it's like, flies on a corpse, right? You know what I mean? Yep. People are just going in and they're feeding on this right now. So to me, it's one it's either that, or it's allow the player at some point at the end of this season, say, listen, we had a run, we tried, it all worked. We think you're better off going somewhere else and getting a fresh slate, a clean slate, where you don't have a market that is on your back and waiting for every single mistake that you make to make it the main topic of conversation on shows like ours, where the chat room seems more focused on that than the fact that this team is in first place and you've got these great things happening all over the place. It is really, like I said, I don't think that you and I are saying anything different than the fan base has been saying when it comes to analyzing where his game has been. But I don't like going into the place of the spiteful hate that we're seeing from it. I think the market's better than that, or at the very least, it should be better than that.
Yeah, okay. And again, Hayden Fleury could be in as early as Saturday. So, I mean, right now, probably, again, even Colin Miller might be ready. We'll find out more after the skate on Friday.
Yeah. Okay. Ken, Johnson Group got you covered play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was awkward for sure. And, one of those situations where as a forward, you hate to make the turnover and then you're hustling as hard as you can to get back. But even though it was unconventional in terms of the delivery, Nikolai Ehlers' ability to block a shot after turning the puck over is my choice for We've Got You Covered, even though he was not thrilled with the play itself and was, mad at himself when he worked his way to the bench. But his desperation play is my choice for We've Got You Covered, even though there were a couple of other maybe more apt plays or more, traditional if in terms of the award. But I'm going that way.
I agree with you, and I'm going to go with a theme here. It's relentlessness is what he showed, because he showed it on the game-winning goal, which I'm going to foreshadow right now and tell you is going to be my lamplighter. But the relentlessness of a player who makes a mistake and doesn't just kind of like bury his head and, do whatever, or pout or give up on the play. I mean, like you said, it's absolutely unorthodox. It does not look pretty. It's clear that Nick Ehlers hasn't played a lot of defense in his days, but what he does do is he never gives up on the play, and he fights to do everything he can to shut down the scoring chance that he created. Relentlessness just is, I mean, he wanted it more tonight than the other players on the Seattle Kraken.
Agreed.
And that's a very good example of it. And a very good example of what the Johnson Group Got You Covered play is all about. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. Ken, that brings us, I was just talking about it. Let's talk about the TCB Lamplighter, the Trans-Canada Brewing Company Lamplighter of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, it's got to be DeMelo. I mean, no offense, Mark Scheifele's goal is nicely done, and it's all of the things you talk about, repeatable goals. All 5 Jets touch it. Kyle Connor, absolute rocket of a one-timer, rebound, jumps right to Scheifele. Gabe Vilardi has to get out of the way. Scheifele gets his 27th, which puts him back slightly ahead of his line mate. Great honorable mention. And man, if we're talking about honorable mention, Sean, I mean, not only because there were 3 goals scored, the hands by Matty Beniers in tight. The pass from Kako was in his feet, and he still roofed it. Amazing. Absolute roof daddy play. And again, I'm not knocking the pass, but based on how fast Beniers was getting to the net, his ability to get the puck up in the air and over Hellebuyck was absolutely exceptional. But when it comes to exceptional, there is only one lamplighter on this evening. It goes to Mr. 600. Tough break for Adam Larson off the stanchion, but Nikolai Ehlers doing a great job of finding DeMelo, and DeMelo absolutely rising to the occasion on a night that was very special for him. It's got to be DeMelo.
Yeah, just to add to that, when I watched that play develop, that puck bounces off the stanchion, and what I saw was Nick Ehlers was right beside, I don't know who the player was, but if you go back, you rewind that game and you watch it, he's right beside a player, and from my look, it's
got to be Bjorkstrand, right winger on the wall.
Sorry, I thought that was a buddy of his, but it's Burakovsky who's the buddy of his, right?
No, he's Bjorkstrand is the Danish player. Yeah.
So just so people can know the background of this, Bjorkstrand and Nikolai Ehlers' dads played together.
Amazing.
They were childhood friends.
Right.
So that's always a fun story to tell whenever they get together. Actually, I told that story way back when Bjorkstrand was still with the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yeah. So anyways, of the 2 players, I think they both noticed at the same time that the puck is coming to the middle, and Bjorkstrand's reaction is just nowhere near the relentlessness of Nikolai Ehlers. He sees it, he skates, he pounces, he gets immediate separation by doing so, and that's what opens up and gets a bunch of players stuck in no man's land. That's what opens up the hole for Dillon DeMelo. He fills it and comes in. I believe it's his 2nd game winner of the season. He knows when to show up. So that's just absolutely great. That's my lamplighter. Doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what Ken thinks. Matters what you think. Share with us your TCB lamplighter, brought to you by our friends at Trans-Canada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for, send us your TCB lamplighter. You're automatically entered to win a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at Trans-Canada Brewing Company. If you can't wait for Kenny and Renny to gift you your own 8-pack, head on down to the tap room at 11290 Kenniston, where they've got great food, great beers. Hey, I was supposed to give a shout out to their great salads by one of our Kenny and Renny listeners who sent
There
me a
you
picture
go.
and said, "You're sleeping on the salads. You're never talking about the salads." So there we go. One
It's
of
true.
our
The salads are always pretty good at the
they're always
live
good.
events and the year enders. That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
Yes, for sure.
Sneaky
Yeah.
good.
Well, and
Sneaky good, like Dillon DeMelo.
there you go. There you go. Nothing more to be said other than who the winner of our TCB lamplighter from the last show is, and that would be Terry. Terry with an ERRI. Okay, so
Oh, okay,
Terry,
Terry,
you
good
know
work.
what to do. Terry, direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I will send you a voucher for a frosty, delicious 8-pack of Lamplighter Amber Ale, brought to you by our friends at TransCanada Brewing Company. It is, I assure you, the nectar of the gods. And that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. What do you got, Ken?
Yeah, I think he milked it a little bit, but it was still a good save. Andre Burakovsky breakaway near the end of the second period. Glove save by Hellebuyck. I think it was one of the tougher tests of the night. Gave her a little patty wall windmill, but yeah, that's what I'm going with personally.
I'll say this. Thank God for that breakaway, and thank God for that save, because I don't know what I would possibly pick. This was just a night where the Winnipeg Jets allowed him to go into cruise control on this night. But as I've said this before, Connor Hellebuyck's the kind of goaltender where when the Jets go to sleep and they allow 40 shots, he's almost as likely to get a shutout doing that as a night like tonight. To be that goalie who can handle both high volume and low volume and be ready to make saves like that, it says something about that player. And it says something clearly about a player who's a Vezina caliber player. If not, as I've said in the conversation, a Hart Trophy player. Anyways, that's my hashtag, the keg save of the game, as well as Ken's. Doesn't matter what we think, matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag, the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show, that would be Jennifer B. Jennifer B., you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me an email. I'll have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. Each location finer than the last. Ken, any parting thoughts before we go?
Yeah, just quickly, had a great chance to speak with Jessica Campbell this morning, the Kraken assistant coach who's breaking barriers and doing a great job on the Kraken coaching staff this year. She had a huge contingent of people from her whole province of Saskatchewan in, and love to see what she's doing in terms of breaking glass ceilings and making an impact and providing inspiration for not only young girls and women out there, but for anyone who wants to get involved in the game. And I'll be sharing that story in our Dump and Chase column in Saturday's Winnipeg Free Press. So,
who is the roast comic? I think she just hosted one of those shows.
Oh, Nikki Glazer,
yeah, Nikki Glazer. So it's funny because I had the Seattle Kraken in an Ottawa game earlier on this year, and I wanted to do a story on her. And one of the funny parts about the conversation we had, I actually found the hockey talk with her, as you would imagine, far more interesting, and that's the story I did on that night. But the humor that Nikki Glazer had met her at some point, and Nikki Glazer really thinks that she looks like Nikki Glazer, that she kind of thinks she's her doppelganger. So I think it's kind of funny that, one of the top comics in the States takes a look at her and has brought her into a little bit of the spotlight. She's very deserving of the spotlight, very interesting to talk to, and has a really strong and important effect on that team. Breaking barriers, shattering glass ceilings, and doing just a phenomenal job in the process. Forget, everything you would think about the first woman in coaching. Just look at her as a coach who's just rocking it in the NHL, because that's exactly what she's doing. Anything else to say before we go, Ken?
Nope, just should be a fun weekend. And just last, we'll get into it more on Saturday, but Sean, Scott O'Neill was hesitant to talk about the homestand, the 8 games, and how it was this big opportunity for them. And based on, an outright loss and an overtime loss to start the road trip, some people were kind of starting to wonder. You look up and the Jets are 4-1-2. They've collected 10 of a possible 14 points with the Calgary Flames rolling into town. And they've done exactly what they needed to do on this homestand to extend their little bit of breathing room in the Central Division. So flowers on that front. And a bunch of people have been asking in the chat room, when will we see Eric Comrie again? My vote is for Saturday against the Calgary Flames. Now we'll see. It was a light load for Hellebuyck today, but I expect it to be coming up here on Saturday rather than on Monday in Monday's game. So I think it's going to be Saturday against the Flames. Any votes for you?
Yeah, you can take the whole who's going to be in that thing. I'm honestly never interested in that at all. Everyone always
people
likes
had been
debate.
asking, so people have been asking.
I know. You can take that. That whenever.
Okay, I'll handle that
one.
account. I'll handle that account.
There you go. I wanted to bring this
tremendous
up because the anthem singer was excellent.
Awesome.
What brought a tear to my eye. What a phenomenal
awesome
job. Great job. Okay, it's time for us to get out of here. The one thing I will say before I go is if you appreciate the conversations happening in this space, we implore you to appreciate the contributions by our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space. For us, that is Pristine Roofing, Cambrian Credit Union, Sweet Lou Ferlin, Vittorio Rossi, the Johnson Group, of course, the Kenny and Renny OGs, TransCanada Brewing Company, and the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. We're looking forward to doing it all over again on Saturday when the Calgary Flames come into town to help the Jets wrap up their 8-game homestand. We will see you after that game. Talk to you later, folks.